Above the coastline between Rio de Janeiro and Recife today, the tropical sun shines brightly. Its rays reflect in the calm waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The serenity of this route is deceptive. The archives of the Brazilian Civil Aviation Authority hold one of the most mysterious cases in the country's history. Case number 195073, which for many years was considered closed. Recently declassified documents, discovered in the private archive of the influential Souza Braga family, shed new light on events that remained shrouded in mystery for decades. This is the case of a private plane that disappeared without a trace in 1950, along with 4 passengers on board. But the real mystery began 37 years later, when one of the passengers, presumed dead, unexpectedly showed signs of life. This channel is not for everyone, but if you remain with us, prepare for a journey into the dark depths of the human soul, where the truth turns out to be more terrifying than the scariest fictions. Brazil in the early 1950s was a land of contrasts and ambitions. After World War II, the economy was developing rapidly, and the elite enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle, emulating European and American ways of life. Private planes were a rarity, a symbol of exceptional wealth and influence. The Souza Braga family embodied the new industrial aristocracy of Brazil. Ernesto Souza Braga, heir to a coffee empire, expanded the family business by investing in real estate and industry. His fortune was estimated at millions of dollars, which was a colossal sum at the time. According to the Brazilian tax service documents for 1949, Ernesto declared an income equivalent to $15 million today. The coastline between Rio de Janeiro and Recife at that time was relatively sparsely populated, with vast stretches of untouched land. Brazil Moderna magazine wrote in its March 1950 issue, "The northeastern coast represents the last untouched paradise on Earth, awaiting bold investors ready to turn deserted beaches into tourist gems." This territory attracted the attention of influential businessmen, including Ernesto Souza Braga, who, according to surviving contracts, acquired several large plots of land along the coast. In her diary, found among the declassified documents, Maria Lucia Braga, Ernesto's wife, wrote on April 12, 1950, "Ernesto spends more and more time studying maps of the coast. He says that in 20 years these lands will be worth 10 times more. I do not share his enthusiasm. I am worried about rumors of difficulties with local residents who do not want to sell their lands." This entry foreshadows the tension that would later play a key role in this story. Dr. Alfredo Junqueira, a family friend and trusted lawyer of Souza Braga, also figures in this story. According to the testimony of his secretary to the police in 1988, Junqueira was involved in processing land deals and resolving legal issues related to the eviction of local residents from the territories acquired by Ernesto. In one of the letters, dated May 5, 1950, Junqueira wrote to his colleague, "The situation is becoming tense. Some families refuse to move, despite generous compensation. Ernesto insists on more decisive measures, but I warned him about possible legal consequences." This letter was discovered in the archive of Junqueira's law firm in 1987, when the case was reopened. The weather on June 17, 1950, the day of the fateful flight, was unusually clear for the rainy season. Meteorological records preserved in the archive of Santos Dumont Airport in Rio de Janeiro indicate a cloudless sky, visibility exceeding 10 kilometers, a light southeastern wind. Ideal conditions for flight, which makes the subsequent disappearance even more mysterious. Before we continue this disturbing tale, it is worth noting that the pilot of the private plane, Asmar Cunha, had an impeccable reputation. According to his flight book, he had flown more than 5,000 hours, mostly on the same type of plane, a Beechcraft Bonanza, which was used on the fateful flight. A former military pilot, a participant in World War II, Cunha was considered one of the most experienced pilots in Brazil. In an interview with the newspaper O Globo on March 3, 1950, he said, "Modern airplanes are so reliable that the probability of a serious accident due to technical malfunction is practically zero." These words take on an ominous tone in light of subsequent events. The private plane, a Beechcraft Bonanza, registration number PTLVB, was acquired by Ernesto Souza Braga in January 1950. According to technical documents, the plane underwent a full inspection a week before the fateful flight and was found to be in perfect working order. The technical report, signed by mechanic João Silva on June 10, 1950, stated, "All systems are functioning normally. The engine is in excellent condition. No signs of wear or metal fatigue were found." This document would later become one of the key elements in theories about what actually happened. In the morning, on June 17, 1950, Ernesto and Maria Lucia Braga arrived at Santos Dumont Airport around 7:30 a.m. According to the testimony of the airport security guard, Antonio Ferreira, they looked calm and even happy. Senora Braga was especially lively. She was joking with her husband and looked very elegant in a light blue suit, Ferreira recalled in his statement to the police. They were joined by Dr. Alfredo Junqueira, who, according to the same witness, seemed more tense, constantly checking his watch and going outside several times to talk on the phone. The pilot, Asmar Cunha, arrived last, around 8:15. He conducted a standard pre-flight inspection of the aircraft, which took approximately 20 minutes. In the pre-flight checklist, which was found in the airport archive, Cunha recorded, "All systems checked, enough fuel for a flight lasting 5 hours. Weather conditions are ideal." The entry is dated 8:40 a.m., June 17, 1950. The flight plan submitted by Cunha provided for a direct route from Rio de Janeiro to Recife, with an estimated time of arrival at 12:30 p.m. According to this document, there were 4 people on board: pilot Asmar Cunha, Ernesto Souza Braga, Maria Lucia Braga, and Dr. Alfredo Junqueira. No additional passengers or cargo are indicated in the documents. The last radio communication with the aircraft was recorded at 9:47 a.m., approximately 1 hour after takeoff. According to the record of negotiations preserved in the archive, Cunha reported to the dispatcher, "At an altitude of 3,000 meters, all systems are functioning normally, estimated time of arrival unchanged." Dispatcher Ricardo Mendez confirmed receipt of the message and requested the next communication session in 30 minutes. This communication session never took place. When the plane did not arrive in Recife at the appointed time, an alarm was raised. The search and rescue operation began at 2 p.m. on June 17th and lasted for 2 weeks. It involved military aircraft, Coast Guard ships, and hundreds of volunteers combing the coast. According to the report of the operation commander, Colonel Romeo Pereira, more than 2,000 square kilometers of water area and coastal strip were examined, but no trace of the aircraft or wreckage was found. This report, dated July 2, 1950, became the official confirmation that there was no hope of finding survivors. The Souza Braga family offered a huge, for those times, reward of 500,000 cruzeiros, equivalent to approximately $200,000 at the 1950 exchange rate, for any information about the location of the plane or the bodies of the missing. Advertisements were published in all major newspapers in Brazil for several months. The archives contain the original of such an advertisement from the Jornal do Brasil newspaper, dated July 20th, 1950, which stated, "The Souza Braga family, with deep sorrow, announces the tragic death of Ernesto and Maria Lucia Braga in the plane crash on June 17, 1950, and offers a reward for assistance in finding their remains." It is noteworthy that the advertisement already speaks of death, although there was no evidence of a catastrophe at that time. In the absence of bodies, the family organized a symbolic funeral on August 15, 1950. The ceremony was attended by hundreds of people, including representatives of the political and business elite of Brazil. O Globo newspaper wrote the next day, "The farewell ceremony for Ernesto and Maria Lucia Braga turned into a national event. The President of Brazil expressed his condolences to the family, noting Ernesto's outstanding contribution to the development of the country." Similar ceremonies were held for Dr. Alfredo Junqueira and pilot Osmar Cunha. The official investigation into the causes of the plane's disappearance was closed in December 1950 with the conclusion, presumably, a plane crash as a result of technical malfunction or human factor. The report of the Aviation Accident Investigation Commission noted, "Given the absence of any debris or traces of a catastrophe, it is impossible to establish the exact cause of the plane's disappearance. The most likely scenario is a sudden depressurization of the cabin, followed by loss of consciousness of the pilot and passengers, after which the plane continued flying until it ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. Experts considered this conclusion unconvincing, considering that the Beechcraft Bonanza is not a pressurized aircraft and was flying at a relatively low altitude. The Souza Braga family business, after Ernesto's death, passed under the management of his younger brother, Carlos Souza Braga. According to the company's financial reports for 1951, the business continued to thrive. Particularly noticeable was the expansion of investments in real estate on the coast between Rio de Janeiro and Recife. In an interview with Negocios do Brasil magazine in 1955, Carlos said, "We continue to realize my brother's vision. These coastal lands will become the jewel of the Brazilian tourism industry in the future." Carlos also mentioned difficulties with acquiring some plots. "The process is slower than Ernesto planned, as we prefer to act strictly within the framework of the law, even if it takes more time." What state are you listening to this story from right now? Leave a comment. We are very interested to know. The story could have ended there as another tragedy gradually fading from memory. But in April 1987, almost 37 years after the disappearance, something amazing happened. The Brazilian consulate in Lisbon received a request for identity confirmation for the issuance of a new passport. The name on the request, Maria Lucia Braga. A vigilant consulate employee, José Ribeiro, drew attention to this name and checked the archival records. In his report to his superiors, he wrote, "The name seemed familiar to me. Checking the archive, I discovered that Maria Lucia Braga is considered dead in a plane crash in 1950. The photograph in the application belongs to an elderly woman. Determining the similarity with photographs from 37 years ago is difficult." Ribeiro contacted the Rio de Janeiro police, which launched a new investigation. The Rio de Janeiro police immediately sent a request to Interpol. Detective Fernando Cardoza was appointed chief investigator on the case. In his first notes on the case, dated April 30th, 1987, he wrote, "The case is extremely unusual. Either we are dealing with fraud and identity theft, or with one of the strangest stories in my practice. The primary task is to establish the identity of the woman who applied in Lisbon." Cardoza had a reputation as a methodical and thorough investigator who had solved several high-profile fraud cases in the 1970s. While the police were trying to locate the mysterious woman in Lisbon, another turn of events occurred. On May 15th, 1987, Antonio Mendes, Maria Lucia's former fiancé before her marriage to Ernesto, received an anonymous phone call from Portugal. In his statement to the police, he described this conversation. A female voice introduced herself as Maria Lucia. She spoke Portuguese with a Brazilian accent, but her speech was influenced by European Portuguese. She knew details of our personal life that only the real Maria Lucia could know. She mentioned a bracelet with emeralds that I gave her for her birthday in 1947 and our secret trip to Petropolis, which only the two of us knew about. This bracelet and trip were not mentioned in any public source, which made the information especially convincing. According to Mendes' statement, the woman who called herself Maria Lucia told a shocking story about the events of 1950. She said that the plane never crashed. Instead, they landed on a private airstrip somewhere on the coast between Rio and Recife. There they were met by armed men working for Carlos Souza Braga, Ernesto's brother. The pilot and Dr. Junqueira were killed on the spot. Ernesto tried to resist and was shot. She was held captive for several months, and then secretly taken to Europe with new documents and a warning, never to return to Brazil under threat of death. Mendes added that the woman sounded frightened and quickly ended the conversation, saying that she would no longer be in touch. This call was a turning point in the investigation. Detective Cardoza began studying the financial and legal documents of the Souza Braga family for the period 1949 to 1951. In his report of May 28, 1987, he noted, "Suspicious transfers of large sums of money from the company's accounts to the personal accounts of Carlos Souza Braga in March-April 1950, shortly before the disappearance of the plane, were discovered. Also attracting attention is a series of land deals completed by Carlos during the month after the alleged death of his brother. The lands were acquired at prices significantly below market value. These financial documents became the first solid evidence of a possible motive for the crime. In parallel with the financial investigation, the Portuguese police were trying to find the woman who applied for a passport. The address indicated in the application turned out to be fictitious, but surveillance cameras at the consulate captured her image. Forensic experts conducted a comparative analysis with the preserved photographs of Maria Lucia Braga from 1950. The experts concluded, despite the significant difference in age, it can be asserted with a high degree of probability that the same person is depicted in both images. Especially indicative is the similarity in the structure of the auricles, the shape of the cheekbones, and the distance between the eyes, characteristics that change little with age. In June 1987, investigators discovered another important detail. In the archive of the Brazilian Airlines Company, a passenger list for the Rio de Janeiro-Lisbon flight of August 27, 1950, was preserved. It featured a certain Helena Santos, whose description corresponded to Maria Lucia Braga. The ticket was paid for through a company owned by Carlos Sousa Braga. This document became the first material evidence of the possible survival of Maria Lucia and her move to Portugal. By July 1987, the investigation had attracted the attention of the Brazilian media. Folha de São Paulo newspaper published a series of articles under the title Return from the Dead: The Mystery of Maria Lucia Braga. In one of the articles, journalist Paula Costa wrote, "If it is confirmed that Maria Lucia Braga is alive, it will not just be a sensation, but proof of one of the most audacious crimes in Brazilian history, staging a plane crash to eliminate competitors and seize business." The publications caused a huge public outcry and increased pressure on the investigators. Carlos Sousa Braga, who was 78 years old at the time, categorically denied any involvement in his brother's disappearance. In an interview with the Rede Globo television channel on July 12, 1987, he stated, "These accusations are absurd and offensive. I loved my brother and was heartbroken after his tragic death. This whole story with the supposedly resurrected Maria Lucia is nothing more than fraud or a mistake. I demand to stop this circus that defames the memory of my brother and his wife." Nevertheless, investigators continued to gather evidence. In August 1987, police discovered another important witness, Joaquim Ferreira, a former security guard at one of the ranches owned by the Sousa Braga family. In his testimony described strange events in mid-June 1950. In mid-June, I don't remember the exact date, a small plane landed on the private airstrip on the ranch. This was unusual as the owners rarely used this strip. I saw a woman being led out of the plane. She looked scared. The men who were with her on the plane were ordered to stay inside. Then I heard shots. The woman was taken away in a car, and the plane was later towed into the hangar. A few days later, it was taken away on a truck covered with tarpaulin. Ferreira claimed that he was afraid to talk about it earlier, as he had been threatened. Based on Ferreira's testimony, on August 15, 1987, police obtained a warrant to search an abandoned hangar on the former Sousa Braga ranch, located approximately 200 kilometers north of Rio de Janeiro. In the report on the results of the search, Detective Cardoza recorded, "In the far corner of the hangar, under a layer of earth and debris, metal parts were found which, according to the examination, are highly likely to be parts of a Beechcraft Bonanza aircraft. Some parts show traces of mechanical impact uncharacteristic of a plane crash. Traces of blood were also found on the concrete floor of the hangar, despite attempts to destroy them. Laboratory analysis showed that the blood belonged to at least 2 different people, but due to the age of the samples, it was not possible to establish whether it belonged to the missing passengers." In September 1987, the Portuguese police finally found a trace of the mysterious woman. In a small coastal town of Cascais, near Lisbon, an elderly woman was found who lived under the name Helena Rodrigues. Neighbors described her as a reclusive but polite Brazilian woman who had lived there for over 30 years. When police arrived at her house, they found that the woman had left it several days ago, leaving most of her belongings. Among them was found a diary dating back to the 1960s, in which the author, without naming names, described her life in Brazil before the tragedy and the subsequent years in exile. In one of the diary entries dated June 17, 1965, it said, "Today is the 15th anniversary of the day I died for the whole world. Sometimes I wake up and can't understand who I am, Maria Lucia or Helena. My real life seems like a distant dream. I still see their faces in nightmares. I hear shots. It is presumed that Carlos kept his promise. The money comes regularly, but it can't buy me a new life or erase the memories." This entry was interpreted by investigators as a factual admission that the author of the diary was indeed Maria Lucia Braga. Genetic testing in 1987 was still in its infancy, but experts were able to compare hair samples found in the house in Cascais with a lock of Maria Lucia's hair, which was stored in her mother's locket. The results showed a high probability that the samples belonged to the same person. More convincing evidence was fingerprints on items from the house, which matched fingerprints from Maria Lucia's archive documents preserved in Brazil. By October 1987, investigators had put together a complete picture of the events of 1950. According to their reconstruction, Carlos Souza Braga organized a conspiracy to seize control of the family business and land holdings. The official police report of October 12, 1987, stated, "The available evidence allows us to assert with a high degree of confidence that Carlos Souza Braga planned the disappearance of his brother, his wife, and other passengers on the plane. The goal was to gain control of the family business and especially the valuable land plots on the coast, which subsequently brought him millions of dollars in profits. The motive for the crime became increasingly obvious as documents were examined. Documents were discovered in the archives of the notary's office that handled the land deals, showing that a serious conflict had occurred between the brothers a week before the disappearance. Ernesto was planning to sell part of the land to foreign investors, which contradicted Carlos' interests. In a letter to his lawyer dated June 10, 1950, Ernesto wrote, "Carlos is categorically against the deal with the Americans, but I see no other way out. Our disagreements have reached a critical point. After my return from Recife, an emergency board meeting must be held to finally resolve this issue." This letter became the last document signed by Ernesto before the fateful flight. The reconstruction of the events of June 17, 1950, compiled by investigators looked like this. The plane took off from Rio de Janeiro as planned, but instead of heading to Recife, the pilot, Osmar Cunha, probably under duress or for a reward, changed course and landed on the private airstrip of the Souza Braga ranch. There they were met by people working for Carlos. Dr. Junqueira and the pilot were killed immediately. Ernesto tried to resist and was also killed. Maria Lucia, the only survivor, was detained and subsequently taken out of the country with new documents in the name of Helena Santos. An analysis of bank documents showed that, starting in September 1950 and for the next 37 years, regular payments were transferred to an account in a Portuguese bank opened in the name of Helena Rodrigues, a later changed name of Helena Santos. The total amount of these payments exceeded $2 million. The conclusion of the police financial expert stated, "These payments can be interpreted as a form of payment for silence, ensuring the loyalty of Maria Lucia Braga and her non-return to Brazil." The case took an even darker turn when on October 25, 1987, the skeletal remains of 3 people were discovered in an abandoned well on the territory of the former Souza Braga ranch. Forensic examination established that the remains belonged to 2 men and 1 woman. A characteristic gunshot wound was found on the skull of one of the men. However, given the condition of the remains and the limited capabilities of DNA analysis, it was not possible to accurately identify the victims in 1987. What is even stranger, in November 1987, Carlos Souza Braga disappeared from his home in Rio de Janeiro. His lawyer issued a statement that the elderly businessman had gone to Switzerland for treatment, but a check at the indicated clinic did not confirm this information. Carlos' disappearance was seen by many as a factual admission of guilt. In an interview with the Rede Globo television channel, Detective Cardoza stated, "The escape of the suspect is a very serious signal. We are working with Interpol to find him and extradite him to Brazil to face charges of triple murder and kidnapping." The search for Maria Lucia Braga and Carlos Souza Braga continued for several months, but yielded no results. Perhaps one of the most disturbing aspects of this story was revealed in December 1987, when investigators discovered a series of letters exchanged between Carlos and an unknown person in Portugal in the period 1970 to 1985. In one of the letters, dated 1978, Carlos wrote, "She is becoming restless about returning to Brazil. Remind her what will happen if she violates our agreement." Almost 30 years have passed, but some crimes have no statute of limitations. This letter was interpreted as a threat against Maria Lucia. Before we continue with this disturbing discovery, it is worth noting that this story touches on much deeper themes than just disappearance and murder. It reveals the dark side of the Brazilian economic boom of the 1950s, when behind the facade of progress and modernization often hid cruelty, corruption, and betrayal. This channel is not for everyone, but if you remain with us, you are ready to look into the darkest corners of human nature. In January 1988, the investigation took an unexpected turn. An anonymous source contacted the Rio de Janeiro police and provided a notebook allegedly belonging to the pilot, Asmar Cunha. It contained coded entries about meetings with Carlos Sousa Braga in April and May 1950. According to the decryption by experts, Cunha received a significant sum of money for cooperating in the plan to eliminate Ernesto. In one of the entries from May 2, 1950, it stated, "C offered 50, too dangerous. Requested 100+ security guarantees." Investigators interpreted this as negotiations for a reward of 100,000 cruzeiros, about $40,000 at the 1950 exchange rate, for participating in the crime. Handwriting analysis confirmed with a high probability that the entries were indeed made by Asmar Cunha. This evidence suggested that the pilot was not a victim, but an accomplice to the crime. However, the question arises, if Cunha was an accomplice, why was he also killed? A possible answer was found in the last entry in the notebook, dated June 15, 1950. "C does not trust me. I sense danger. Perhaps it's best to back out." This indicated that Cunha might have been planning to withdraw from the conspiracy at the last moment, which made him dangerous to Carlos. In February of 1988, another important discovery was made. In the archives of the Sousa Braga Company, documents were found showing that immediately after Ernesto's presumed death, Carlos initiated a series of legal procedures to forcibly evict residents from the lands acquired by his brother. In one of the memorandums, dated June 20, 1950, just 3 days after the plane's disappearance, Carlos wrote to his lawyers, "It is necessary to expedite the eviction procedures. Without Ernesto and his liberal views, we can act more decisively. Compensation should be minimal. Any resistance should be suppressed by all available means." This document showed that Carlos not only immediately began implementing his plans, but was also certain that his brother would not return, even though the search operation was still officially underway. The land plots in question later became some of the most expensive tourist areas in Brazil. According to experts, their value by 1987 exceeded $500 million. This figure gives an idea of the scale of the motive that could have prompted Carlos to organize a crime against his own brother. The whereabouts of Maria Lucia Braga remained unknown, but in March of 1988, Portuguese police found an interesting lead. In a small monastery near the city of Porto lived an elderly woman known as Sister Helena, who had settled there about 6 months earlier. The abbess of the monastery said in an interview with investigators, "She came to us in a state of deep stress, spoke of persecution and sins of the past, and asked for refuge and the opportunity to spend the rest of her days in prayer and repentance. We don't ask about the past of those who seek solace with us, but she seemed sincere in her remorse." When investigators tried to speak with Sister Helena, it turned out that she had left the monastery a few days before their arrival, without telling anyone her plans. She left a sealed envelope with a request to hand it over to the authorities if she was being sought. The envelope contained a handwritten statement. "I, Maria Lucia Braga, acknowledge that I am alive, contrary to official reports of my death in 1950. I was not a voluntary participant in the crimes committed against my husband and other passengers on the plane, but my silence for 37 years makes me an accomplice. I was young and frightened, and I chose life over justice. Now, as my life is coming to an end, I want the truth to be known, although I know that I don't deserve complete forgiveness. Carlos Sousa Braga and his accomplices must answer for their crimes. I will not hide from justice, but I ask for understanding and mercy for an old woman whose life has already been a punishment. This document became the first direct evidence that Maria Lucia Braga had indeed survived and knew about the crime. Handwriting analysis confirmed the authenticity of the handwriting, comparing it with surviving letters and documents of Maria Lucia before 1950. However, Maria Lucia herself disappeared again, possibly fearing persecution from Carlos's accomplices, who might still be at large. In April of 1988, Portuguese police reported that the body of an elderly woman had been found on a beach near Lisbon. There were no documents with her, but the description matched Maria Lucia Braga. The cause of death was reported to be a natural heart attack. Brazilian researchers requested a DNA analysis, but the results were inconclusive due to the limited capabilities of the technology at that time. Leave a comment with your theory about what really happened to Maria Lucia Braga. Did she really die on that beach? Or was it another staging in a long chain of deception? Simultaneously with the search for Maria Lucia, the international search for Carlos Sousa Braga continued. In May of 1987, information was received that he might be hiding in Paraguay, a country known at that time as a haven for people fleeing from justice. Detective Cardosa and a team of Brazilian police officers went to Asunción to coordinate the search with local authorities. However, the trail went cold again. In June of 1988, an unexpected turn in the case occurred when Carlos's lawyer contacted the prosecutor's office in Rio de Janeiro. In an official statement, he reported that his client had died of a heart attack in a private clinic in Montevideo, Uruguay, on June 2, 1988. The statement was accompanied by a death certificate and a report of the body's cremation. Brazilian authorities immediately requested a verification of the authenticity of the documents. An investigation conducted by the Uruguayan authorities revealed a number of violations. The clinic indicated in the documents did exist, but its management denied the fact that a patient with the name Carlos Sousa Braga had stayed there. The doctor who signed the death certificate did not work at this clinic, and his license had been revoked a year earlier. Finally, the crematorium that supposedly performed the cremation had not conducted any procedures on the specified date. Everything indicated that the documents had been falsified to stop the search for Carlos. In July of 1988, Brazilian police received an anonymous message with a photograph of an elderly man sitting in a cafe on a beach in Punta del Este, Uruguay. The photograph was taken, according to the informant, on July 10, 1987, more than a month after Carlos's alleged death. Experts confirmed with high probability that the photo did indeed depict Carlos Sousa Braga. This finally confirmed the suspicion of a staged death. In August of 1988, Uruguayan police conducted a raid on a luxurious villa on the coast of Punta del Este, where Carlos was supposedly hiding. However, by the time the police arrived, the villa was empty, although signs of a hasty departure were evident. Among the items left behind were medicines prescribed in Carlos's name and several photographs in which he was captured with an unknown young woman. These findings confirmed that he was indeed hiding there. Until recently, the trail of Carlos Sousa Braga was lost again, and despite the ongoing search, he was never found again. In September of 1978, the prosecutor's office in Rio de Janeiro officially charged him with the murder of 3 people, kidnapping, large-scale fraud, and a number of other crimes. The court found him guilty in absentia, but the sentence was never carried out. In October of 1988, the last significant breakthrough occurred in the investigation. In one of the banks in Panama, a safe deposit box was found rented in the name of Carlos Sousa Braga. After obtaining a court order, the safe was opened in the presence of Brazilian investigators. Inside were documents shedding light on many aspects of the case, including a detailed plan of the operation to eliminate Ernesto and seize control of the family business, dated January of 1950. Copies of an agreement between Carlos and Maria Lucia were also found, guaranteeing her safety and financial security in exchange for silence and agreement never to return to Brazil. Perhaps the most shocking find was Carlos's diary, in which he frankly described his motives and feelings. In a recording from June 20th, 1950, 3 days after the crime, he wrote, "It is done. Ernesto was always weak, too soft for real business. His plans to sell the land to foreigners were the last straw. The family legacy must remain in safe hands. I feel no remorse, only relief. It's a pity that I had to eliminate Junqueira and the pilot, but the risk was too great. The decision to save Maria Lucia's life was impulsive, possibly a mistake, but she will never dare to speak. Fear is a reliable guardian of secrets." These documents became the final confirmation of Carlos's guilt and revealed the full picture of one of the most shocking crimes in the history of Brazil. They also confirmed that Maria Lucia had indeed survived and spent decades living under an assumed name in constant fear, effectively as a prisoner of her silence. Despite all the efforts of international law enforcement agencies, Carlos Sousa Braga was never found. According to one version, he died in the early 1990s in one of the countries of Latin America. According to another, he managed to completely change his appearance and identity and continued to live under a new name. Officially, his case remains open to this day, although the probability of discovery after so many years is practically zero. The fate of Maria Lucia Braga also remains not fully clear. It is officially believed that the body found on the beach in Portugal in 1988 belonged to her and that she died of natural causes. However, the lack of convincing evidence of identification has given rise to many theories. Some believe that she staged her death once again, fearing either the remaining accomplices of Carlos at large or prosecution from the law for her many years of silence about the crime. In 1996, journalist Paulo Costa, who first published a series of articles about this case, released the book The Ghost of Flight Pal LVA, the story of the greatest deception in Brazil. In it, he wrote, "This is a story not only about a crime, but also about the price of silence, about living in the shadow of one's own death. Maria Lucia Braga spent 37 years as a ghost, not dead, but not really alive. Her tragedy is perhaps even greater than the tragedy of those who actually died that day. They passed away in an instant. She died every day for almost 4 decades. The property of the Sousa Braga family, including the land acquired at such a terrible price, was confiscated by the state after the exposure of Carlos's crimes. However, by that time, most of the assets had already been withdrawn through a network of offshore companies, and only a small fraction was recovered. Many of the land plots that caused the tragedy are now built with luxury hotels and resorts attracting tourists from all over the world. Only a few of the vacationers know about the dark history associated with these places. In 2010, on the 60th anniversary of the disappearance of the plane, a memorial was erected on the coast between Rio de Janeiro and Recife in memory of the victims. The opening ceremony was attended by descendants of the Junqueira and Cunha families, but none of the remaining members of the Sousa Braga family came. The surname, once one of the most respected in Brazil, has become synonymous with betrayal and cruelty. The story of the disappearance of Flight Pal and the subsequent appearance of Maria Lucia Braga after 37 years remains one of the most sinister episodes in the criminal history of Brazil. It reminds us that sometimes the most terrible crimes are committed not by strangers, but by those we trust the most. It also shows that some secrets, despite all the efforts to hide them, ultimately come to the surface, bringing with them belated but inevitable justice. In the archives of the Brazilian Civil Aviation Authority, case number 1950-73 is officially closed, but its echo continues to resonate in the country's collective memory. For a new generation of investigators, this story serves as a reminder that even the most convoluted cases can be solved if you do not give up in the face of difficulties and do not allow time to become an ally of criminals. As Detective Fernando Cardozo said in his last interview before retiring in 1995, some crimes leave such a deep mark on the public consciousness that they become something more than just a violation of the law. They turn into parables of greed, betrayal, and retribution. The Sousa Braga case is just such a case. It reminds us that justice may be delayed, but not denied. Truth, like the ghost of Maria Lucia, always finds a way to return and demand recognition. And today, when the tropical sun shines over the coast between Rio de Janeiro and Recife, and tourists enjoy the beauty of the beaches built on land soaked in blood, The story of the 4 passengers who disappeared in 1950 and the woman who emerged from nowhere 37 years later continues to live on as a grim reminder that the true price of wealth and power is sometimes measured not in money, but in destroyed lives and ruined souls.